Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who joins us from around the world. We're so glad you're here. This is Andrew and Renee. Welcome to the Stack series. Today we are exploring evolutionary game theory. Now, when most of us think about evolution, about, the raw mechanics of nature, we tend to have a very specific movie playing in our heads. It's usually some kind of nature documentary. We see the lion chasing the gazelle on the Serengeti.
Yep.
We see two rams smashing their heads together on a mountainside. It's all very visceral. It's physical.
It is. It's that classic Victorian view of nature, isn't it? Nature, red in tooth and claw.
Exactly. And the assumption we make, almost unconsciously, is that fitness, that survival, is just a measure of physical specs.
Right. Who has the biggest muscles? Who has the sharpest claws?
Who can run the fastest 100-meter dash? Right. It feels like a sporting event where the athlete with the best stats just wins the gold medal.
And that's the intuitive view, for sure. And for a long time, even biologists got, well, a little bit stuck there. But the problem with that whole narrative is that it treats the environment like it's just scenery.
Scenery? How so?
It assumes that an animal is competing against the weather or the distance or, like you said, a stopwatch.
Right. If I'm running a race against a clock, my strategy is simple. Run as fast as possible. The clock doesn't care what I do.
Exactly. The clock doesn't try to trip you.
No.
But in the real world, you are not competing against a clock. You are competing against other living things.
And these that are thinking, adapting.
And reacting to you.
Yeah.
And that is where the whole picture shifts completely. In the real world, the best thing to do depends entirely on what everyone else is doing.
Okay, this feels like the core concept we need to lock in right at the start. Fitness isn't some static number printed on a trading card.
No, not at all. Fitness is frequency dependent.
Frequency dependent. Okay, that sounds a little academic. What does that actually mean?
It means the value of my move, my strategy, depends entirely on how frequently your move, your strategy, appears in the population.
That's all relative.
It's all relative. Let's break that down with an analogy, because frequency dependent does sound a bit dry. Think of a cocktail party.
Okay, I'm there. It's loud. I'm holding a drink.
You're in a crowded room trying to talk to a friend. If everyone else in that room is whispering, what's your best strategy to be heard?
Well, I just speak in a normal voice. I don't need to shout. It works perfectly.
Right. Being a low-volume speaker works great if everyone else is also low volume. But now, imagine 5 or 6 people start shouting to be heard over the music. The environment changes.
Well, now if I whisper, nobody hears me. My best strategy has to change. So I have to shout too.
Exactly. And then because you are shouting, the person next to you has to shout even louder. And suddenly everyone is screaming at the top of their lungs and nobody can hear anything.
The fitness of my strategy collapsed because everyone else adopted it.
The fitness of shouting depends on how many other people are shouting.
Or think about a traffic jam. That's my favorite example of this. If I find a secret shortcut to work that cuts through a quiet neighborhood, that strategy is super high value.
It's a winning move.
It's a winning move. As long as I'm the only one who knows it.
Right. But what happens if Waze or Google Maps suddenly redirects 10,000 other people onto your secret shortcut?
Then my shortcut becomes the new traffic jam. The value of the strategy just craters because too many people adopted it.
Precisely. So once biologists figured this out, that nature isn't just a physical contest, but a strategic interaction where the landscape is constantly shifting based on what the other players are doing, it changed everything. It gave birth to the field we are covering today, evolutionary game theory.
And we are going to explore this in, 4 distinct movements today?
That's the plan. We're going to start with the foundations, how we moved from a sort of naive view of animal cooperation to a rigorous math of selfishness.
Then we'll get into the active debate, the areas where the scientists are still arguing. We'll talk about why, sometimes, being the slowest evolver in the room is actually the way to dominate a partnership.
Which is completely counterintuitive.
Completely. Then we move to the frontiers. This is the really heavy stuff, graph theory, network triangles, and how the actual geometry of a population can change how fast it evolves.
And finally, we'll wrap up with the implications. What does all of this mean for human ethics, for economics, and for the future of AI?
It sounds like a journey from the biology of the 1960s all the way to the computer engineering of the 2020s.
It really is.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We have to start with 1, foundations. What did we think we knew before the game theorists showed up on the scene?
Well, if you go back to, say, the mid-20th century, biology was dominated by a very specific, I don't say somewhat romantic view of animal behavior. Yeah. You had these giants of ethology, people like Nico Tinbergen and Konrad Lorenz, and they were out there observing nature, and they saw a lot of fighting, but they noticed something strange about the fighting.
It wasn't total war.
No, it was often ritualized. It was restrained.
Okay, give me an example.
Think of two male deer locking antlers. They push and they shove, but they rarely try to, gore each other in the flank with a sharp point.
Right, it's more of a shoving match.
It is. Or snakes' male adders will wrestle each other trying to pin the other one's head down, but they almost never use their fangs. They don't bite.
Which is weird, right? I mean, you have this deadly weapon. If you want to win, why not just bite the guy and be done with it?
That was the million-dollar question. And Lorenz and Tinbergen, they came up with an answer that sounded very noble. They argued that animals had evolved to limit their aggression for the good of the species.
For the good of the species. So kind of group patriotism.
Exactly. The idea was, if we all went all out and killed each other every time we had a dispute over food or a mate, the species would just go extinct. We'd wipe ourselves out.
Okay.
So evolution must have wired us to play nice, to fight with gloves on, to preserve the group as a whole.
That makes intuitive sense, doesn't it? If I'm a wolf and I kill all the other wolves, who am I going to hunt with? If we burn down our own house, we all die. So why wouldn't evolution wire us to be team players?
It's a great question, and it's exactly why this theory, we call it group selection, held on for so long. It feels right to us socially, it appeals to our better nature, but you have to look at it from the gene's perspective.
The selfish gene.
Let's just run a quick simulation in our heads to see why it breaks down.
Okay, I'm picturing a valley of very polite, cooperative wolves. They're all playing by these good of the species rules.
Perfect. They share their food, they don't fight to the death over mates, they conserve energy. It's a little wolf utopia. The average fitness of the group is very high.
Sounds great.
But now, a random mutation happens. One single wolf is born without the polite gene. He's a defector, a cheater.
The bad apple.
Right. So when everyone else shares food with him, he takes it. But when it's his turn to share, he refuses. When the other males were doing their little ritual wrestling match, he just bites them and takes the mate.
He doesn't play by the rules.
He keeps all those calories and all those opportunities for himself.
So in the short term, he's actually doing way better than the nice wolves. He's stronger, he's healthier.
Exactly. And because he's stronger and gets more mates, what happens? He passes on that defector gene. He has more puppies than the polite wolves.
And in the next generation, there isn't just one bad apple. There are 5.
Or 10,
Yeah.
And they all take advantage of the polite wolves, and they reproduce more. And suddenly, the polite gene is being systematically outcompeted.
The polite wolves are essentially suckers in this game.
They are. Eventually, the polite strategy goes extinct. The good of the species argument collapses because natural selection, at its core, doesn't care about the group. It cares about the individual's success relative to their immediate neighbors.
So the old theory just couldn't explain why nature wasn't a constant bloodbath because it relied on everyone agreeing to be nice, which evolution doesn't reward.
Yeah.
If being nice can be invaded by being mean, then being nice shouldn't exist.
Precisely. Biology needed a way to explain limited war and cooperation without falling back on this fuzzy group selection or good of the species idea. And for a while, they really struggled. There was an attempt by R.C. Lewontin to use game theory, but he tried to frame it as a game against the environment.
Like playing chess against the weather.
Essentially, yeah. And it failed because, as we said, the environment doesn't play back. The weather doesn't look at your move and say, aha, you built a shelter, so I will counter with a blizzard.
It's not strategic.
But other animals are. And this is where the story gets really cinematic. Because the breakthrough didn't come from a famous biologist in a high tower at some fancy university. It came from a guy who was, by all accounts, kind of a drifter at the time.
George Price.
George Price.
Tell us about George Price, because his story feels essential to understanding the soul of this whole field.
Price is one of the most fascinating and, frankly, tragic figures in the history of science. He was an American polymath. I mean, brilliant. He'd worked on the Manhattan Project. He'd worked at IBM on some of the earliest computers.
And not a biologist.
Not a biologist by trade, no. By 1967, he's living in London. He's divorced. He's somewhat adrift, unemployed. He was incredibly smart, but a total outsider.
And he was just reading biology papers in libraries for fun.
Yes, that's what he did. He was reading W.B. Hamilton's work on kin selection, the idea that we help our relatives because they share our genes. And Price gets obsessed with this problem of conflict. Why do animals fight the way they do?
So he decides to solve it.
He sits down in his flat in London and he writes a manuscript.
Antlers, Interspecific Combat, and Altruism.
That's the one. And he does something that was way ahead of his time. He uses computer simulations. He models animals fighting mathematically.
In 1967, that must have been like prehistoric for computing.
It was incredibly primitive, but he figures it out. He shows that animals aren't fighting nicely for the good of the species. They are fighting nicely because it is the best individual strategy to avoid getting seriously hurt. If you have massive antlers and you charge blindly, you might kill your opponent, sure, but you might also break your own neck. The ritual is actually a selfish calculation of risk versus reward.
So he writes this paper, which sounds completely groundbreaking.
It is. He submits it to Nature, which is the most prestigious science journal in the world.
Yeah.
And the editors, well, they don't really know what to make of it. It's too long. It's from this unknown author. It uses math they aren't used to.
But they don't reject it outright.
No. They send it to a reviewer, a man named John Maynard Smith.
And Maynard Smith is a big deal.
He is a titan of evolutionary biology in the UK, a central figure. And Maynard Smith reads this paper from this unknown American, and he realizes this is it. This is the missing piece.
He gets it.
He sees the brilliance immediately. He recommends that Nature publish it, but he suggests some cuts, to make it shorter and more focused.
Standard academic process. We love it. Just cut 500 words.
Usually, yes.
Okay.
But Price was complicated. He was going through a very chaotic period in his life. He was moving apartments, getting deeply involved in a radical form of Christianity, just very disorganized.
Okay.
He gets the letter from Nature asking for revisions, and he never resubmits.
He ghosts Nature.
He effectively ghosts the entire academic establishment.
That is wild. So you have this revolutionary idea just sitting in a drawer somewhere?
It sat there for years. Maynard Smith actually wanted to cite Price's work in his own research, but he couldn't find him. He eventually has to track Price down. By this time, Price is living in a squat, having given away all of his possessions to the poor, and Maynard Smith basically says, look, we need to publish this. Wow.
So they team up and they publish the seminal 1973 paper, The Logic of Animal Conflict.
And that paper introduces the concept that changed everything. The ESS.
The Evolutionarily Stable Strategy.
Let's unpack ESS, because this feels like the central engine of the whole theory. What does that actually mean?
An ESS is a strategy that, if it's adopted by a population, cannot be invaded by a mutant strategy.
Can it be invaded?
It's a concept of stability, not optimality.
That's a really key distinction. It doesn't mean it's the best outcome for everyone involved.
No, absolutely not. It just means it's an outcome where no single individual can do better by changing their move alone. It's uninvadable.
Okay, let's use the famous example to make this click for everybody. The hawk and the dove game.
Right. This is the classic model that Maynard Smith and Price used. Imagine you have two possible strategies for fighting over a resource, let's say a piece of meat. You have the hawk strategy.
Okay.
A hawk fights aggressively. It escalates until it either wins or it gets seriously injured.
All in, no holding back. All in. Then you have the dove strategy. A dove puffs its chest out, it displays, it threatens, but if the opponent actually attacks, the dove runs away.
So the dove never gets hurt, but it also never wins a fight against a hawk.
Exactly. Now let's run the simulation. Imagine a population of all doves.
Okay, very peaceful.
Everyone is just posturing. It's a paradise. Nobody gets hurt. They share the food, more or less. But is it stable?
No. Because if one hawk shows up...
One single hawk shows up, and he wins everything. He attacks, all the doves run away, he takes all the food, he gets 0 injuries. His fitness is massive compared to the doves.
So the hawk strategy spreads like wildfire.
The mutant invades. So all dove is not an ESS.
Okay, so let's flip it. Let's imagine a population of all hawks. Everyone is a fighter.
That sounds painful.
It's a disaster. Every time two individuals meet over that piece of meat, they fight until one is seriously injured. The average payoff for the entire population plummets because everyone is spending their time recovering from wounds.
Right. It's a terrible way to live. Now imagine a single dove appears in this war zone.
Okay, one dove in a world of hawks.
The dove meets a hawk. The hawk, of course, attacks. The dove immediately runs away. So the dove gets no food in that interaction. But, and this is the key, the dove doesn't get injured.
While two hawks are ripping each other to shreds over a piece of meat.
The dove is sitting on the sidelines, maybe a little hungry, but perfectly healthy. And if the cost of injury is high enough, the dove actually does better on average than the average hawk.
So the dove strategy can invade a population of hawks.
Exactly. So all dove isn't stable. and all hawk isn't stable.
Who's what is?
The evolutionarily stable strategy, the ESS, is a mix. It's a state where a certain percentage of the population plays hawk and a certain percentage plays dove.
A balance.
The system balances at a point where the average payoff for being a hawk is exactly equal to the average payoff for being a dove. At that point, neither strategy has an advantage.
It's stalemate.
It's a Nash equilibrium, but refined for biology. And this was huge because it explained why you see limited war in nature. It's not because animals are noble or thinking about the species.
Right.
It's because an all-out war strategy isn't stable against itself. The math forces a compromise.
That is such a crucial distinction. It completely removes the morality play from nature and just replaces it with cold, hard math.
It does. And tragically, this removal of morality, or perhaps the reinsertion of a different, colder kind of morality, weighed very heavily on George Price.
You mean with his other work, the Price equation?
Yes. He developed the Price equation, which is a very elegant, powerful mathematical description of how any trait, including altruism, evolves. But the equation seemed to suggest to him that true selfless altruism was impossible.
I want to dig into that because it sounds almost like a philosophical crisis, not just a scientific one. What did his equation actually say that broke him?
Well, it's a covariance equation. Without getting lost in the calculus, it essentially separates evolutionary change into two parts. The first part is the effect of natural selection, what benefits the individual. The second part is what's called transmission bias.
Go ahead.
And Price looked at his own math, and he realized that every instance of what we call altruism, a mother saving her child, a bee stinging an intruder to save the hive, could be mathematically reduced to that first part. It could all be balanced on a ledger.
I help you because you carry my genes.
Yeah.
Or, I help you now because I expect you to help me later.
Exactly. It's all a transaction. He looked for love, and he found accounting.
That is a haunting way to put it.
He found a cold, hard, selfish calculation at the bottom of the human soul, and he hated it. He refused to accept that his own equation was the final word on human nature.
So his life became a rebellion against his own discovery.
It really did. He was trying to prove that a human being could do something truly unselfish, something that had zero evolutionary benefit. That's why he gave his shoes to strangers on the street. That's why he opened his home to homeless people until he was bankrupt and living in a squat himself. He was trying to break the math.
And he couldn't.
He eventually committed suicide in 1975. It's a heartbreaking end to the story of the man who gave us the logic of animal conflict.
It really is. It's a powerful reminder that these abstract theories can have profound implications for how we view ourselves and our place in the world.
Absolutely.
But the story doesn't end with Price. We have the ESS, we have the math of selfishness, but we still have this problem of cooperation. If the math always says be selfish, how does cooperation ever survive in the long run?
This brings us to the other major pillar of the foundations, the prisoner's dilemma.
The classic police procedural setup. Two suspects, arrested for a crime, held in separate rooms.
Right. The deal is, if you both stay silent, cooperate with each other, you both get a light sentence, say 1 year. If you rat out your partner defect and he stays silent, you go free and he gets a life sentence.
The sucker's payoff.
But if you both rat each other out, you both get a medium sentence, say 5 years.
And the cold logic is, no matter what my partner does, I am always better off defecting.
Explain that.
If he stays silent, I should defect and go free instead of getting 1 year. If he defects, I must defect to get 5 years instead of life. So we both defect.
And you both end up with 5 years, which is way worse than the 1 year you would have gotten if you had just stayed silent. That is the dilemma. Rational individual choice leads to a bad collective outcome.
But in the 1980s, Robert Axelrod and W.D. Hamilton showed that this all changes if you have to play the game more than once.
Exactly. The iterated prisoner's dilemma. If we know we are going to meet again tomorrow, and the day after that, suddenly my reputation matters. If I defect on you today, you will remember, and you will punish me tomorrow.
And this is where strategies like tit for tat became famous.
Right. Tit for tat is simple. I cooperate on the first move, and after that, I just do whatever you did to me last time. If you were nice, I'm nice. If you were mean, I'm mean.
An eye for an eye.
And it was the champion for a long time. It proved that cooperation could evolve based on simple reciprocity. But here is where it gets really interesting, and this is a much more recent development in the field.
Oh, this is the zero determinant stuff.
Yes. For a long, long time, we thought tit for tat and its variations were the peak of cooperation. But recently, researchers discovered a whole new class of strategies called zero determinant, or ZD strategies.
Okay, what do they do?
These are strategies that allow a player to mathematically dictate the relationship between their payoff and their opponent's payoff. They can unilaterally set the terms of the engagement.
That sounds incredibly controlling.
It is. Some of these are what we call extortion strategies. They basically say, you will cooperate with me and accept a lower payoff than you deserve, because if you don't, I will burn the whole game down and we'll both get nothing. They force the opponent to be a sucker.
That sounds like a winning strategy.
It is, against one opponent. But, and this is the fascinating part, in an evolving population, extortion doesn't win in the long run.
Why not?
Because if everyone becomes an extortionist, the population collapses into mutual defection. Nobody cooperates. But there is another subset of ZD strategies called generous strategies.
Generous strategies.
These are strategies that forgive defectors occasionally. They don't just retaliate like tit for tat. They sometimes cooperate even after you've defected, just to try and reset the relationship and get back to cooperation.
So they give you a second chance.
They do. And the math shows that these generous ZD strategies can actually dominate a population. They are robust enough to punish cheaters, but forgiving enough to foster cooperation. They replace the extortioners.
So the math actually suggests that generosity, that forgiveness, is a winning evolutionary strategy in the long run.
In the long run, yes. It forgives, but it also controls the payoff structure enough to ensure it isn't a doormat. It's a kind of trust but verify on steroids.
That is a really nice counterpoint to the tragedy of George Price. The math does allow for goodness.
It allows for goodness that is robust, goodness that can defend itself.
Okay, so that's the foundation. We have the ESS, we have the prisoner's dilemma, we have this fundamental shift from species good to strategic selfishness. But science doesn't just stand still. There are parts of this theory that are being fought over right now in labs and journals.
Oh, absolutely. The field is very active, very alive. And this brings us to two, active debate.
And one of the biggest debates, it seems, is about speed. We've all heard of the Red Queen.
The Red Queen hypothesis, yeah, from Alice in Wonderland. Now here, you see, it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place.
This is usually applied to predators and prey, right? The fox gets faster, so the rabbit has to get faster, so the fox has to get faster. It's an endless evolutionary arms race.
Exactly. It's a dynamic of rapid antagonistic co-evolution. But recently, theorists have proposed a counter-dynamic, something called the Red King.
Based on the Red King from Through the Looking Glass.
Right. The Red King is usually sleeping in the story. And the hypothesis here states that sometimes, in evolution, the slowest runner wins.
Wait, hold on. You're telling me the strategy is to be the slowest runner. That breaks everything we just talked about. The lion catches the slow gazelle, the slow business goes bankrupt. How can slow possibly be a winning move?
It drives biologists crazy, too. But you have to change the game. We aren't in a race anymore.
What are we in?
We're in a negotiation.
A negotiation, like haggling over a used car.
Exactly like that. This applies specifically to mutualism, when two different species are cooperating for mutual benefit. Imagine you want to buy a car. You are willing to pay $5,000. The dealer wants $10,000.
Classic standoff.
Now, imagine you are completely biologically inflexible. You literally cannot change your mind. You put $5,000 on the table and you basically fall asleep.
Okay. I'm not a very dynamic negotiator.
But what does the dealer have to do? If he wants to make a deal at all, he is the one who has to do all the moving. He has to come down to your price because you are incapable of coming up to his.
I see. By being stubborn? By being biologically unable to adapt, I force him to do all the adapting.
Precisely. That's the Red King hypothesis. In a biological partnership, the species that evolves more slowly acts as a strategic anchor. It forces the faster evolving species to adapt to its needs because it can't adapt to theirs. By being slow, it captures more of the benefit of the mutualism.
That is diabolical and brilliant. So the theory predicts that in cooperative relationships, species should actually be in a race to be slow.
That was the mathematical prediction. But, and this is why we call this section active debate, reality had a different opinion.
This is the study about the ants and the plants, isn't it?
Yes. A biologist named Benjamin Rubin did a fantastic study on acacia plants and the ants that live inside them. It's a classic mutualism. The plant provides a home and sugary nectar for the ants. The ants provide protection from herbivores that want to eat the plant.
So according to the Red King hypothesis, the ants who are getting a free home and all this food should evolve slowly to force the plant to give them even better terms.
That was the prediction. But Rubin looked at the genomes, and he found the exact opposite. The mutualistic ants were evolving faster than their non-mutualistic cousins.
So the Red King theory failed.
In this specific case, yes. And the reason why is fascinating. It turns out the biology of the system overrode the clean logic of the game theory. The acacia plant produces nectar, but it laces that nectar with a specific enzyme inhibitor, a chitinase inhibitor.
Well, what?
An enzyme inhibitor. Basically, it's a chemical that stops the ants from being able to digest other kinds of sugar from other sources.
Wait, the plant is a drug dealer. It's getting the ants addicted.
Effectively, yes. The ants become physiologically dependent on the acacia's specific brand of nectar. Because of this nectar mechanism, the ants couldn't afford to be slow. They were locked in a coevolutionary race to constantly adapt to the specific changing chemistry of the plant's nectar.
That is wild. So the abstract math said, be slow and stubborn, but the messy reality of digestion said, evolve or starve.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of why you can't just rely on the equations. You have to look at the messy biological mechanisms, the enzymes, the digestion, the physiology. The Red King might still apply in other cases, but here the Red Queen was still in charge because of that chemical addiction.
It also brings up the issue of assuming everything just stops at a stable point. We talk about ESS as an endpoint, but does evolution ever actually stop and park the car?
That is another huge debate. The classic ESS methodology assumes a static endpoint. We find the point of stability and we say evolution stops here. But in reality, many systems never stop. They just cycle forever.
Like rock, paper, scissors.
Exactly. Rock beats scissors, scissors beats paper, paper beats rock. There's no single winner. If you have 3 lizard species with different mating strategies, say one is super aggressive, one is sneaky, one guards its mates, you often see this endless rotation.
The aggressive ones become common,
So the sneaky ones rise to beat them,
which allows the guarding ones to do well.
which then creates an opening for the aggressive ones again. It spins forever. There is no stable point.
So if you just took a snapshot in time and looked for an ESS, you'd be missing the whole movie.
You'd miss the entire dynamic. You'd be looking for a parking spot in the middle of a Formula One race. The debate now is really about how much of nature is a parking spot in ESS and how much is the race with all its cycles and chaos.
Okay, so we've covered the foundations and we've seen where the science is arguing with itself. Now I want to get to the really heavy stuff, the part you call 3, frontiers. This is where we move away from simple hawks and doves and start looking at geometry.
Yes, this is where evolutionary game theory meets graph theory.
Graph theory. That sounds like a tough math class.
It is, but it's very visual math. Up until now, most of our models assumed what we call a well-mixed population.
A well-mixed population.
Think of it like a soup. Every molecule, every individual bumps into every other one randomly.
So any animal can fight any other animal in the whole world.
Right, but that's not how the real world works, is it? Real populations have structure. You interact with your neighbors, your family, your social circle. You don't interact with a random guy on the other side of the continent.
So instead of the soup, we have a network, a web.
We have a graph. In this graph, individuals are nodes. They are the points on the web. And the lines connecting them are edges. That's who they interact with. And it turns out the shape of this web, its geometry, fundamentally changes the outcome of the game.
Okay, give me a concrete example.
Let's talk about triangles.
Triangles, okay.
To visualize this, don't think about math. Think about a neighborhood.
Okay, I'm in the suburbs.
Imagine you live in a cul-de-sac. You know your neighbor Bob, and Bob knows your neighbor Alice, and you also know Alice. You, Bob, and Alice form a tight little triangle.
Everyone knows everyone's business. It's a clique.
Right. A triangle is a closed loop. Now, recent research has shown that the number of triangles in a network, how clustered or cliquey the neighborhood is, has a massive effect on evolution, specifically on something called time to fixation.
Time to fixation. That's how long it takes for a new beneficial mutation to take over the whole population.
Correct. Let's say a beneficial mutant appears. In a random network where there are few triangles, think of it like a busy airport where you only talk to random strangers. It might spread at a certain speed, but if you add triangles, if you make the network clumpy and full of cul-de-sacs, it slows the spread down drastically.
Why? What's the mechanism?
It's local competition. Imagine you come up with a brilliant new idea, a new strategy. You tell your neighbor Bob.
And Bob tells our other neighbor, Alice.
And Alice tells you. The idea just bounces around inside that cul-de-sac. It gets reinforced locally, but it has a really hard time escaping to the next town over because you guys are mostly just talking to each other.
Or an echo chamber.
Exactly. A network with high clustering, lots of triangles, acts as a sort of trap. It increases local competition. If I reproduce, my offspring is competing for space with my neighbors. But my neighbors are also connected to each other. We are all stepping on each other's toes.
So triangles act like brakes on evolution.
Yes, they are decelerators. They slow the whole process down.
But wait, usually we think faster is better. If I have a good gene, I want it to spread as fast as possible. Why would you ever want a network that acts like a brake?
This is the mind-blowing part. It turns out there is a trade-off between the probability of a mutant winning and the time it takes. Usually, if you want to increase the probability that a good mutant takes over, you have to accept that it will take longer. But with triangles, we see something unique. We can tune the time without changing the probability very much.
So we can design a system that is, say, 80% likely to find the answer, but we can decide if it does it in a year or in a century.
Exactly. We can tune the speed. And the question you asked, why would you ever want to be slow, is answered by looking at what we call optimization landscapes.
Optimization landscapes. This is like the terrain that evolution is walking on.
Imagine a landscape. If the problem you're trying to solve is simple, like climbing a single smooth hill to find the highest point, you want to be a hare. You want to run fast. An accelerator network, one with low triangles like an airport, is great for that. You just run straight up the hill, boom, you're at the top.
But what if the landscape isn't a simple, smooth hill?
What if it's the rastrogen function?
That sounds like a villain from a sci-fi movie.
It might as well be. It's a mathematical function that when you graph it, looks like an egg crate from hell. Or a foggy mountain range with hundreds of little spikes, deep valleys, false peaks, and treacherous holes. It's what we call a rugged landscape.
So if I'm a hare on that landscape and I just run fast.
You run up the nearest little spike you can find and you stop. You think, I'm at the top. But you're actually on a tiny molehill, and the real Mount Everest is 5 miles away, hidden in the fog. You get stuck on a local optimum.
Because I didn't explore. I just optimized way too quickly.
Precisely. In a rugged, complex landscape, the tortoise wins. The network with lots of triangles, the decelerator, slows the whole process down. It maintains diversity in the population for a much longer time. It allows the population to wander through the valleys to explore different options before it commits to climbing a single peak.
So the braking mechanism of the triangles forces the population to look around more before it settles down. And that means it's much more likely to eventually find the true highest peak, the global optimum.
Exactly. It finds the best solution because it didn't rush. This is a profound insight not just for biology, but for computer science. When we design evolutionary algorithms to solve complex engineering problems, we might need to intentionally build triangles into the code to stop the AI from jumping to the first mediocre solution it finds.
That is incredible. It's literally the fable of the tortoise and the hare, but proven with graph theory.
It gets even more nuanced than that. The outcome also depends on something called the update rule.
The update rule.
How does the turnover happen in the population? Is it birth-death or is it death-birth?
Wait, isn't that the same thing? Someone is born, someone dies. The net result is a new generation. The order can't possibly matter that much.
The order matters immensely in the math. In birth-death, I reproduce first, my offspring is born, and then it looks around and kills a neighbor to take their spot. The birth drives the death.
Okay, and death-birth.
A neighbor dies randomly, opening up an empty spot, and then the surrounding neighbors compete to fill that vacancy with their offspring. The death drives the birth.
It seems like such a tiny semantic difference.
You would think. But mathematically, it leads to totally different evolutionary outcomes on these graphs. For example, those accelerator networks I mentioned, they mostly only exist under the death-birth rule. If you switch the order to birth-death, the whole system behaves differently. It shows that the micromechanics of how life turns over, the specific bureaucracy of death and replacement, are just as important as the broad social structure of the network.
This is getting really granular, but it paints such a rich, complex picture. It's not just survival of the fittest, it's survival of the fittest subject to the network topology, the update rule, and the ruggedness of the optimization landscape.
That doesn't roll off the tongue quite as well, but it's a lot more accurate.
So we've gone from antlers to algorithms. What does this all mean for us, for humans? This leads us to the final part of our conversation, 4 implications.
The implications are huge, and they stretch across many fields. Let's start with cultural evolution.
You mean memes?
Memes, ideas, beliefs, norms. Humans don't just pass on genes, we pass on information. And the math of evolutionary game theory applies perfectly to this.
Because an idea or a belief is like a strategy.
Exactly. Being honest is a strategy. Driving on the right side of the road is a strategy. These things evolve, they spread, or they die out. Take the ultimatum game from behavioral economics.
Walk us through that one again.
Okay, I give you $100. I say, you have to offer a portion of this to a stranger. You can offer $1, $50, whatever you want. If the stranger accepts your offer, you both keep the money as split. But if the stranger rejects your offer, I take the $100 back and nobody gets anything.
Okay, so pure logic says if I want to maximize my money, I should offer the stranger $1, and the stranger should take it.
Why? Why should they take it?
Because $1 is better than $0. If he rejects my insulting offer, he gets 0. So logically, he should accept any non-zero offer, no matter how small.
That is the rational economic solution. Homo economicus would do that. But what happens in real life?
If you offer me $1 out of $100, I'm rejecting it out of spite. I would rather we both get nothing than let you walk away with $99. It's insulting.
Exactly. We have an innate sense of fairness. Classical economics calls that behavior irrational. Why would you burn money just to spite someone? But evolutionary game theory has an answer.
What's the answer?
Fairness evolved as a stable strategy in a social species. If we have a mechanism to punish unfairness, even at a cost to ourselves, it forces the group to cooperate more equitably.
So my irrational spite is actually a policing mechanism for the good of the group's long-term stability.
It's a long-term investment in the group's social contract. Fairness is an ESS. If we didn't have that impulse to punish unfairness, then greedy, exploitative strategies would invade and destroy the cooperation that our species depends on.
So our moral intuition is actually a kind of evolutionary algorithm.
In many ways, yes, which leads to a big shakeup in the field of economics. Traditional economics assumes humans are hyper-rational. We are supposed to be these perfect supercomputers calculating every future move to maximize our utility.
Homo economicus, the rational man.
Right. But biology assumes bounded rationality.
Okay.
It assumes we are simple creatures using simple rules of thumb. Do what I did last time if it worked. Copy the successful guy. Be nice until someone is mean to you.
And it turns out the biological model is better at predicting how the stock market works than the economic model.
Often, yes. Because humans aren't supercomputers. We are adaptive learners. We behave much more like the agents in these evolutionary games than like the rational robots of economic theory. So economists are increasingly stealing their homework from biologists.
Now, we have to issue a warning here, a philosophical one.
The naturalistic fallacy, this is absolutely crucial. Just because we can explain why something evolved like aggression or war or selfishness does not mean it is right or good.
Does not equal what?
Exactly. EGT is a descriptive science, not a prescriptive one. It describes what is stable. It does not and cannot describe what ought to be. Just because Hawk is a stable strategy in a model doesn't mean we should go around punching people. That's a gross misreading of the science.
But the flip side of that coin is also true, isn't it? EGT shows that cooperation, altruism, and fairness are also natural. They aren't just these fragile cultural inventions we've layered on top of a brutish nature.
That is the hopeful message, I think. We don't have to fight against our nature to be good. Goodness has a naturalistic basis. It can be a stable, robust strategy. Those generous ZD strategies we talked about. That's mathematical proof that forgiveness can be a dominant force in the universe.
And finally, we are using all of this to build the future, to build artificial intelligence.
We touched on this with the optimization landscapes. We are now at a point where we can design AI agents that evolve, we create digital populations, give them a complex problem to solve, and we let them play the game. By mimicking these biological structures, by using triangles to slow them down, by using different update rules, we can solve engineering problems that are far too complex for a single human mind to calculate.
We are essentially farming evolution in a computer to build better cars, better logistics networks, better drugs.
We are harnessing the algorithm that built us in order to build our tools for the future.
That is a profound place to land. From George Price's lonely apartment in London to the cutting edge of AI, it seems the logic of the game holds up.
It connects everything. Biology, economics, mathematics, morality. In the end, it's all the same game.
Before we wrap up, thank you to all our partners, sponsors, and scholars who made this podcast and the research possible. We're truly grateful for your support. And to our listeners, thank you for being part of this journey with us. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and follow Stack Studios for more informative content. And support us in Patreon. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and let the search for wisdom guide you forward. Have a great day.